Hi, it's Sheridan Webb here from the Training Designers Club, which is the place to go for practical L&D support, especially if you work on your own. And today I am going to briefly answer the question, how do I make my training design truly bespoke? This came about with a conversation that I was having with a fellow L&D professional quite recently, who had got themselves into a little bit of a pickle about what does bespoke actually mean. Well, firstly, let's talk about what bespoke doesn't mean. And I'm going back, to the start of my career when I first went freelance, and I was chatting to a fellow L&D professional who thought that I had somehow managed to do something really quite clever and quite sneaky by saying that I was a bespoke training designer. Cool, that's brilliant, isn't it? Because all you've got to do is do a search and replace for the company name, make sure you're using the right job titles, and swap out the logo. That must be brilliant because you can sell the same core program over and over and charge a fortune for it. That is not bespoke training. I have never had a standard program which I've simply rebadged and sold to somebody as a bespoke program for them. Now, I'm not saying that some elements did show up in more than one program. Of course they did. Because bespoke training is not at the other extreme, creating absolutely everything completely fresh, inventing a whole new raft of theories, models, and exercises that have never been seen anywhere else, which is what the person that I was speaking to thought that they might have to do. Bespoke training is somewhere in between. If you think about if you have a bespoke suit made for you, if you have a custom car built for you, people aren't reinventing engines. They're not going to find a whole new way of providing brakes because they know what works and they know what needs to go into a car. Plus, there are of course standards. But what we are able to do is really listen to what the customer wants, how the customer is going to use something, what their preference is, and then take them through all of the options available to allow them to help build something from all of the parts that are available that suits their needs. And yes, there may be one or two things in there that are completely 100% original, but most of it isn't. It's the combination that makes it bespoke. So enough of my waffle. How can you design a bespoke learning and development program? I've got 8 points that I want to share with you briefly. The first is to make sure that your program is aligning and reflecting the business goals and objectives. When we design training that is perfectly aligned with where the business is wanting to go, it just feels like it's the right fit. We're not trying to force people to make leaps that they might struggle with otherwise. Linked to that is the importance of weaving in the company values. And that's not just about putting them on the slide at the start of the training, although that might be part of it. It's making sure that they are referred to time and time again. Whatever the discussion, whatever the theory or model, make sure that we are looping back to the business goals and the company values. Help draw the parallels between what we're covering in a workshop and what that means in real life. A really important thing when we're designing bespoke training is to make sure that we use the organisation's language and their terminology. So yes, this consultant was right to a point when we had to make sure that we use the right job titles, but it's way, way more than that. One of the greatest compliments I ever had as an external training provider was when someone reviewed my materials and commented to a colleague, well, you can tell this has been written in-house because of the way that it's worded. And to me, that was a great, great compliment. It showed that I'd absolutely nailed it. It was speaking their language and they totally could visualize themselves in that situation. And that's what it's all about. We need to make sure that the case studies, the role plays, and the examples all reflect their reality. They absolutely have to be able to relate to the stories and all the different things that we're referring to in the training. They have to be able to see themselves in those situations, in those examples, and picture how things are going to work out for them when they actually go and apply the training back in their own roles. Something else that is important that we do if we can is reflect their industry and market conditions. Although it might not be explicit, it needs to come out in the way that we actually develop the training. So, for example, if we are working with a retail client, we really need to focus on the pace. We need to, get things out there. We are working in retail cycles. They're very much seasons with retail. If you're working in an accountancy firm, that's going to feel a little bit off kilter. With accountancy, it's going to be more important that we get it right than we get it out of the door on a certain day. So just be aware of the different nuances and the different approaches within the particular industries, and also any external factors that may be relevant to that industry at that time. The other thing that it's really important to do, if possible, is link in with internal policies, processes, and procedures. Where we can link generic models, theories, behaviours, and skills into specific policies, processes, and procedures, again, it helps the learner to actually fit all the pieces together and imagine how they're going to apply these things in their workplace. So, wherever possible, let's get that procedure out. Let's talk about the behaviours that are needed at each stage in that procedure. Let's practice how we're actually going to put these things into practice. And that will really help people understand the relevance of the learning and start to think about how they're going to apply that back in the workplace. It's a really, really crucial way of making something bespoke. The other things that we can do, perhaps more at the design phase, the research phase, is to involve your key stakeholders in the research and the design and reflect their words back to them as much as possible. Really show that you've listened to what they feel is important. And when we're doing the design, if we can get some of these key people to actually do little keynote speeches or share their own stories, again, that really makes the program completely bespoke, because you have examples from within their business. You've got their senior leaders telling people this is really important and this is how it's going to make an impact. We're not just picking some random TED talk off of YouTube. So wherever possible, capture those really specific stories and those really particular examples. Finally, when we're actually running the training, and again, this is something that we can build into the design, is think about ways that we can allow people to work on their real problems, their real challenges as part of the training. Now, this does depend a little bit on your audience and the maturity of the learners. Some people won't feel that they can bring their own challenges. So if, for example, you're talking on a performance management course, it's brilliant if people can bring their own challenges and work on those. But you may not have the right culture for that, in which case, make sure that you've written some case studies that completely reflect their environment, that people can work on as more generic ones, but things that they will recognise. If you're working on a problem solving course, get people to bring in their own problems. If you're working on a presentation skills course, build in time for them to work on their own presentations, applying the things that you're teaching them. All of these little tips and tricks to make the training as bespoke as possible will also help to make that training more and more effective, because the more people can understand how to apply the learning in their environment, it shortens the distance between this abstract training course that they've been sent on and what they do on a day-to-day basis. The shorter we can make that gap, the closer we can bring these two things together, the more likely the learners are to actually apply that learning back in the workplace. And that's also going to lead to the organisation being far more likely to seeing real benefits to this training, real business benefits that we can point to and help to demonstrate the return on investment. So I think in there are 8 different ways that you can create a really bespoke learning experience for your organization. You don't have to come up with a completely new model. If the urgency importance matrix is going to work, why are we going to replace that? If the grow coaching model is going to work, let's use the grow coaching model, but let's use it absolutely based on their situation, their environment, and their people. For more information and helpful practical tips, do check out the rest of the YouTube channel or listen to the Training Design podcast. I would love you to visit our website, which is www.trainingdesignersclub.co.uk, where you can find all sorts of free and low-cost materials and have the opportunity to become part of our VIP community, which is like having your own virtual training team on tap.